Hey guys, this shot took a long time. This was a 4.5 hour project. So it is greatly accelerated here in order to crash it into a mere 10-minute video, which I think is a little easier to tolerate. It started out by taking the original shot, which I wasn't happy with, and doing a bunch of repainting. So this was, I don't know, I probably spent an hour just trying to salvage the old shot. And here you see cutting out the characters from the background so I can repurpose the background. A little bit of paint on the vase. I even pulled in this iris from the character library so I could animate her eye looking back. The problem is there's another shot several shots earlier where her eye did that, so I realized that's not going to work in this shot. I wanted to redo the pose of the ninjas. You can see he's standing up, and that didn't work because I realized that the subsequent shots show him obviously squatting down. So as I worked with this, I'm like, okay, the important thing here is Ninja 2, and that framing right there that you see right there is, I'm like, that's probably a better framing to begin with, because the problem is, even if you had her eye moving, I don't personally think as a viewer you're gonna even notice it. It's like animation for no good reason, because your focus is going to be completely on Ninja 2 struggling to climb into the room. So all of these insights led me to say, okay, see there I tried to repurpose Ninja 1's pose, but ultimately this right here is where I landed. Is what we really need to do is reframe the shot completely and focus on what's really important. And then I realized this prior shot had exactly the pose I wanted, and I thought the rendering and the execution of Akari was pretty good in this shot, so I'm like, okay, fine. Let's backpedal. Let's just repurpose that pose, focus on getting the action for Ninja 2 correct, and rock and roll from there. So I was able to use Krita's copy layer, paste layer functionality to go ahead and take all the work I had done on Ninja 2's animation and just copy it into the final project. Now, one thing I do want to mention here, I don't know if at this point, okay, at this point we're still working in Krita 4.1.7, I believe. At some point in the project, I switched to the alpha of Krita 4.3. 4.3 is an important release, not because of any features. If you're looking for more advanced animation tools or things like that, you're going to be disappointed. It's not what 4.3 is about. And by the way, right now it's pre-alpha, okay? But what 4.3 is about is taking the memory management and the resource management under the hood, the behind the scenes managing of the data that Krita does, and completely rewriting it, which is a great thing, because there are capabilities in Krita like the ability to take a fully animated group of layers and apply a transform mask to them to take that whole animated sequence and reposition it in the frame, for example. It's cool that you can do it, but the problem is, more often than not, when you do it, little pieces of your image literally disappear, because Krita does a very bad job of managing the pixel data, which it breaks into little squares in order, I think probably just to conserve memory when it's actually doing the processing. And then what will happen is some of the squares they're just gone. It would be like somebody took a square lasso and cut a piece out of your imagery. And what you find is sometimes you can sort of fix that by putting the layers in a group and then doing a merge group, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Anyway, long story short, too late, is that 4.3 appears to have solved some of these issues. So when I took Ninja 2 here, who's being drawn fairly large, as you can see in the frame, and then did the very thing I'm talking about, I applied a transform mask to him, and then just got him, positioned correctly in the frame. What I found was, all of a sudden, none of these artifacts were appearing. And these are artifacts that have been present in Krita for as long as I've been using Krita, I should say as long as there's been animation features in Krita. That was pretty much when I started using it, was when it was hitting, like, just before version 4, when they first introduced the animation. So It's kind of an interesting day in the sense that I also grokked out the Krita file format, and I found out that the Krita file format, like the ORA MyPaint format, is actually just a zip file. And that was kind of cool because I realized that most of the metadata that tells Krita about the animation information and all that sort of stuff is simple XML files, which means like contributing to the development of Krita would be a very laborious process. It's a really big project with a lot of dependencies. It would be hard. It would be a clunky thing to try to get involved with. But if you can access the file format, and especially if it's a text-based format, sometimes that makes adding functionality easier. In the case of Krita, at the key moment where it would have been useful, you hit a brick wall, and here's why. The actual layer data in the Krita file format is not plain old ping files, and that was kind of deflating to discover, because the whole file format is a human readable file structure with XML files describing everything, including the animation frames and everything, but the actual pixel data for the individual frames is just a proprietary binary format that looks to me like there's several lines of metadata in each image, and then it's just 64 by 64 squares of binary data. So you could grok out that format, but why the heck they don't just have those layers in the zip file as additional ping images is an absolute mystery to me. It would if it was, then the entire Krita file format would be completely human grokkable. You could create third-party tools, either offline tools or even that operate in a web browser to do different things with animation that Krita is currently not capable of. It would make it easy. Now you still can do that the same way Ed Tadeo does his post-production in his Krita animations. Is he renders out image sequences of each of the important layers and then recomposites them in HitFilm Express. In my case, I would probably be bringing them into software I wrote myself, which would run in a web browser. Not because I'm trying to create cloud software per se, but just because the ability to do a lot of really cool stuff with animation using JavaScript in the browser is extremely, the tools are really mature and the tools are very performant. And so for me, I'd love to be able to take the Krita file format and say, well, okay, I have access to the animation data. I have access to all the images. Okay, I'll go ahead and add my own functionality without actually having to get through the what I know would be a difficult process of trying to build Krita. That's my opinion. You could grok the file format, but the simple solution is just save the... I mean, at least from my point of view, the simple solution for Krita's developers is, why are you saving the images in a proprietary format? The whole point of packing the Krita file format into a zip file is so that it's the same with the ORA MyPaint format. The whole point is that you want people, if they want to be able to just rename the file .zip instead of .kra and access the stuff that's inside. That's the whole reason you would use, I would think, that you would use that kind of a file format. So, as so often happens with software, at the very point where it would have been useful, all of a sudden it's not useful at all. So, the simple solution is you take each of the important layers of your image, render them out as image sequences, and bring them into some video editor or whatever. I was kind of hoping I'd be able to bypass that process and be able to automate some things about the animation and compositing process, but alas, my luck ran out right at the point where it came to accessing the images. Well, anyway, here you can see what's going on. As I said, this is actually Krita 4.3 alpha, and it, like I think I mentioned, it only crashed once. Everything seems to work fine, and we're almost at the end of the road here. Here I did a little patch layer to sort of marry his body to the floor, and then some lighting effects, a little color correction. And you'll see here in a moment how the final shot turned out. There it is. And as you guys know, there will be more later.